Hello everyone and welcome back to Nathan and Deer's Guide to Everything, and welcome back to another episode of The Legend Forge. This week we have 11 for you from Stranger Things, and actually this is kind of a hybrid build because essentially you could build Vecna from this as well. And just a heads up right from the start, there will be spoilers for season 4 in here. I'll try to keep them as limited as possible, but it's basically impossible for me not to mention kind of what happens really, and for the entirety of Stranger Things actually. So but like I said, we're going to be building 11 from season 4 specifically, where she's kind of at, I guess, the peak of her power, what we've seen so far. Apologies for not uploading as much recently, just been super busy with work, and every time I come on here I make promises about how I'm going to upload more regularly. I'm not going to make that promise this time because I'm just too busy all the time, but hopefully I'll be back around a little bit more than I have been recently. But without further ado, I think it's time to jump into The Legend Forge. Let's go.
Your friends have lost. Your suffering is almost at an end.
So welcome back everyone to D&D Beyond. Let's go to my characters and let's find 11 all the way at the bottom down here. As you can see, level 17, bit of spoilers there. But we have Homebrew, Critical Role content, Magic the Gathering content, Eberron content turned on. We have some optional class features and customize your origin as well. This is a fairly straightforward build for the most part, actually. We've gone with a variant human for the race. Obviously, it makes sense. She is human after all. I haven't chosen languages for this one, just common and telepathy, essentially. But ability score increase, we've gone with Charisma and Dex out the gate. For skills, we've gone with Intimidation. I feel like absolutely kind of in the later seasons, she has a much darker side to her, like when she cracks the girl with the roller skate, spoilers as I mentioned, and things like that. She definitely has an aura of people would be scared of her. I think you would be if she could do those kind of things to you. And a starting feat, we've gone with telekinetic. So straight out the gate, if you imagine season 1, what are her abilities? Telekinesis is the primary one, I guess. With this, we have a +1 to charisma. We have the mage hand cantrip, basically always prepared. It's got a range of 30 feet and it is invisible in this particular form, which of course it is. We see her close doors, close windows, do a variety of other things with her powers in the show. As a bonus action, we can also try to telekinetically shove one creature you can see within 30 feet. They must see on a strength save with a few bonuses on there, DC 8 proficiency bonus plus your charisma, or be moved 5 feet towards you or away from you. A creature can willingly fail this save. So if you need to save someone falling off a cliff or just push them through a doorway or anything like that, you can do it here as a bonus action, and that is going to be a theme moving forwards. We're going to get as many telekinetic powers as possible. Now we're moving into the class. You can see we have 17 levels in Sorcerer, and we do start with the Aberrant Mind. Sorcerers only have a 1d6 hit point, so as low as it gets basically, so we are pretty squishy, unfortunately. But then I feel like she has a decent constitution with her, I guess, her resistance to all the stuff that's happened in her life, basically, and her powers make her a bit tougher, but our hit points are still pretty dire, 104 as you can see. Anyway, proficiencies we've gone with Arcana and Insight. I think Insight, especially in the last season, she calls out lies a lot, especially with Papa. She doesn't fall, she's not as I guess she spent 10 seconds thinking of the word. She's not as naive in the later seasons, which is fantastic. And Arcana, just from, I think this would just come from all the otherworldly threats that she's faced in the Upside Down and the ones that have leaked through into the material plane, as it were, into Hawkins. Obviously, we have Spellcasting. Our Sorceress origin, as I mentioned, is Aberrant Mind, which works fantastically well for both her and Vecna. And like I said, I'll go through, when we're going through this, I'll tell you which bits sound more like Vecna than 11, I guess, because not all of it fits. But again, the Legend Forge series is just about inspiration for you. This is not going to be perfect. We're working with what we've got, essentially. So our psionic spells that are essentially always prepared as we level up, all the way up to level 9, we get new ones. I won't go through all of them, but there is a good mix here of just psychically focused spells like Mind Sliver, or like send a message to someone, and then there's some more otherworldly ones, some more upside down focused ones. We have Evard's Black Tentacles, Summon Aberration, Hunger of Hadar. All these things involve tentacles basically from another realm, so you could say it comes from the upside down. So while that isn't exactly faithful to 11, it definitely is for Vecna, so you could play both here. At first level, we also have telepathic speech from Aberrant Mind. Basically, we establish connection to a creature within 30 feet of us, and then we can speak to them within 5 miles if your charisma is maxed out. So your charisma modifier equals 1 mile of distance, and it also lasts a number of minutes equal to your sorcerer level. So we have 5 miles at 17 minutes currently, just because we are quite a high level, but this will obviously scale as you go up. This is fantastic. The ability she has when she goes into these deprivation chambers, when she floats in the salt water, this kind of represents that, and a lot of these features are going to be based around that, basically where she walks into someone else's mind briefly, and sometimes you can communicate with them, sometimes you can't, sometimes you can influence it, sometimes you can't. It's kind of a grey area, but yeah, telepathic speech comes through there. Font of Magic gives us sorcery points and meta magic options. I'll just go straight to the meta magic choices we've made. We start with Subtle Spell, because often, other than a bit of a scream, she doesn't really use anything. I guess Somatic she does, she holds her hand out, so you could see that, but I think Subtle Spell works, because in the sense of D&D, I think spells would be much more animated, otherwise casting glyphs in the air or pulling materials out, something like that. So this allows us to do that without any somatic or verbal components. We have Quicken Spell as well. She's pretty swift when she's using her telekinesis, so I think this works here as well. She doesn't really need to charge it up or anything a lot of the time, so Quicken Spell works for that. We also have Heightened Spell, because I feel like, especially when she goes into her angrier states, more of a rage mode, I guess you could call it. I think Heightened Spell works because, and just mechanically for D&D, this helps you impose your abilities better, essentially move things around with your mind as best you can. We can basically give a creature disadvantage on its saving throw against the spell, which is incredible. It does cost 3 sorcery points though, pretty sorcery point heavy. And finally, we have Empowered Spell. And essentially what this does is we can spend 1 sorcery point to reroll a number of the damage die up to your charisma modifier. So we could do up to 5 dice. If you really wanted to deal damage to something, this is the feature to use. And I feel like, again, during the end seasons, she's a bit more no holds barred, more experienced with her power, so she can do some damage if she wants to. So that's why we've gone with Empowered Spell at the end there. If you would pick any more, please leave a comment down below of which ones you would have gone for. There's a lot of options, a lot of things work, but there we go. Sorcerer's Versatility, which is an optional feature, just allows us to swap out some meta magics and other skills when we level up. For our 4th level ability score improvement, we've actually gone with a feat, and we have a lot of feats on this character. So our first one was telekinetic, if you remember, and now we have telepathic charisma as well. So it's a +1 to charisma. This allows us to speak telepathically to any creature we can see within 60 feet of us, so we don't have to establish that connection anymore. We don't have to send a message spell, we don't have to send sending, we can just do it within 60 feet, which is fantastic. And while she can't do this specifically, I feel like this could be more Vecna focused. He seems to have kind of an omnipotence in the area, especially when they're in the upside down and he's manipulating people. Definitely that comes into there. And we also have Detect Thoughts, which I guess over long distances is more what 11 does. Again, we have to widen the goalpost a little bit here because we're limited by what we have, but definitely this is a good influence to have if you want to play this psionic character. We have Magical Guidance, which is another optional feature. We can spend a sorcery point to re-roll something, basically, which is fantastic. Why wouldn't you not want that? It's a little lucky point. Psionic Sorcery is a fantastic ability, which I didn't realize the Aberrant Mind sorcerer have. I've never played a sorcerer, actually. Oh, no, I lie. I have, but I didn't play an Aberrant Mind one. That's why I probably missed this. But you could, rather than expend a spell slot, we can use sorcery points to cast a spell, and we have to spend 1 for each level of the spell that it is. If we do this, it requires no verbal, somatic, and no material components unless it's something of value that's consumed by the spell, which is incredibly powerful. This is amazing. So you could just say, if something has a 500 gold piece value that you need for a spell, doesn't matter, you don't need that anymore, you can just use psionic sorcery instead. And obviously a lot more of these higher level, high value items that you need to cast some spells wouldn't be necessary, at least at level 6 anyway, and maybe moving forwards all the way to the end of the skill tree. But this is just for the psionic spell, so limited by that. We have psychic defenses. We gain resistance to psychic damage or advantage on saving throws against being charmed or frightened. I think this works. I think the amount of stuff Eleven's gone through in the deprivation chambers, in Nina in season 4, I think she overcame some of her fears and things like that. And I guess resistance to psychic damage, she just has a strong mind. Her and Vecna have a mind battle essentially towards the culmination of season 4. So this is a great way to represent that there. And moving a little bit further forward, at level 8 we also have another feat, and it is Warcaster. Now I felt like this was necessary just because D&D mechanically, if you're a spellcaster, you're gonna need this. You need advantage on con saves in some regard, or a really good bonus to it, because that's kind of how your character functions in the later levels, and you'll be taking big chunks of damage. So you need this, and I think it makes sense as well, because when she's concentrating, she very rarely loses concentration unless she's getting hit around or whatever, but she still manages to maintain some level of threat, and it's the same for Vecna. So this gives us advantage on con saves to maintain concentration on a spell. We can perform somatic components even if we're holding something. Not really necessary, I guess, in this regard, because she usually has empty hands. And we can use a spell as an opportunity attack, which again enforces this idea of she's quick with her spells, and so is Vecna. There's nothing holding them back from just doing it at point blank or in a reactionary capacity. At 12th level, so a big jump from 8th to 12th, we get nothing, basically no features, just spell slots. But ability score improvement at level 12, gone for another feat, Gift of the Gem Dragon Charisma. Now this one is from Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, so if you don't have this, maybe just go for Constitution or Dex for a bit more AC, or any other feat you can think of that might work in here. But Gift of the Gem Dragon Charisma is the best way to represent more of her telekinetic powers, I think, and make it even more threatening with that. Increase our charisma by 1, and we have telekinetic reprisal. So the first telekinesis ability gave us a bonus action shove. This is when we take damage. This makes it a reaction. So if we take damage from a creature that was in 10 feet, we can try to do the same thing essentially. Strength save, same thing. On a failed save though, the creature takes 2d8 force damage and is pushed up to 10 feet away. So it's a bit more powerful. And to be fair, wait until level 12 for this. This is going to be more utility than really for the damage. You could take this earlier if you wanted as well, instead of Warcaster or something like that, or telepathic maybe. Maybe you could swap this in telepathic actually. As her mind opens up in the later seasons, she becomes a bit more powerful in that sense. But regardless, on a successful save, the creature takes half as much damage, isn't pushed, and we can use this reaction a number of times equal to our proficiency bonus. So just a really good, another way to make her a bit more threatening in combat. Now we have Revelation in Flesh, which on its lowest level I think applies to 11, but this is definitely a Vecna focused ability. But again, this is inspiration, not exactly, because we can't make 11 exactly, unfortunately, as much as I would like to. Essentially, let's read it through. You can unleash the aberrant truth hidden within yourself. As a bonus action, you can spend 1 or more sorcery points to magically transform your body for 10 minutes. For each sorcery point you spend, you gain one of the following benefits of your choice, the effects of which last until the transformation ends. So we can see invisible creatures within 60 feet. We can gain a flying speed, and it makes our skin glisten. We can gain a swimming speed if we have gills and webbed feet and things like that. And we can also make our body slimy and palpable, so we can squeeze through gaps and we can't be restrained. Now, this doesn't really work for 11. The only one that really works, I would say, is probably the see invisible creatures thing, because we could flavor this as when she goes into her most powerful state, I guess, both of her nostrils bleed, her eyes bleed, and she has this crazy look on her face. Season 1 vibes, essentially, and in Season 4 you see flashbacks of it. I'll put a screenshot on screen now so you can see what I mean if you haven't seen it. The eyes turning black or become writhing sensory tendrils on that first ability. We could just reflavor that as you look horrifying because there's blood pouring out your eyes or whatever. We have to have a bit of flexibility with this to make it fit. But with Vecna, all these things work. Now, he doesn't really have a flying speed, but you could argue why couldn't both of them, to be honest. They just use their power to push themselves upwards. They could fly, sure. And they don't really have a swimming speed either, but again, all the stuff we've seen from the Upside Down is pretty monstrous. So you could just say, these alien gills grow. This hovering means My skin now glistens with mucus. You could flavor it as the Mind Flayer or the Demigorgon or whatever you want to do. You could just make it more horrifying, essentially. And Vecna is pretty scary to look at. So all of these things, I think, apply to him specifically. So yeah, there we go. Revelation in flesh. Finally, to round out this particular character, we've gone for ability score improvement at 16th level, and this is actually the one without a feat. We have a charisma and constitution, and this maxes out our charisma and gives us a little bit more con. So we're ready for, I guess, any more levels in the future. Any feats we pick up, any items we pick up. We're ready to get a bit of an upgrade there. So that is it. I kept it at level 17. I didn't go all the way to 20 because I feel like there's still a bit more growth there for 11. Obviously, there's still more Stranger Things to come. I thought this was the last season, but people keep telling me that it's not. So that's exciting. Let's move on a little bit forwards to abilities. You can see we started out with 10 strength, 13 dex, 14 con, 12 intelligence, 8 wisdom, 15 charisma. I guess the standouts here, charisma, spellcasting ability, we have to have that. While 11 I don't think is the most charismatic, she's definitely intimidating, so that'll be useful there. She's not the strongest physically, she is just a girl. She has more, I guess, psionic powers as opposed to actual strength. Dex, she needed some of. Con, absolutely needed some of to be able to withstand level 17 threats in D&D. And 8 wisdom, just because the lack of street smarts, where she comes from. She's very not knowledgeable, especially in the early seasons, about the world itself, like outside of the asylum thing that she was kept in as a kid. So I think 8 wisdom fits there, although it definitely would be higher than that now by season 4. I think maybe a 10, but we're limited by what we've got. Description, I didn't pick a language for her. Like I said, we've gone with Haunted One background. Pretty straightforward. You're haunted by something so terrible you dare not speak of it. She basically doesn't remember it in the earlier seasons, and now she's more knowledgeable of it. She still doesn't like that part about her, that past that she has. Tries to avoid it at all costs. But the skill proficiencies we've gone for are investigation and survival. I think investigation is a bit of a stretch, but we could flavor this as Vecna as well, finding his victim, things like that. And survival definitely is more 11 focused. Earlier on in the seasons, she does basically fight to survive by finding Mike and everything else unraveling in the space there. And she knows how to track and identify these creatures now, whatever comes from the upside down. So I think that kind of fits into it a little bit there as well. For equipment, there is none. Let's jump into the character sheet. This is probably one of the first characters I've done where I've just made no homebrew items whatsoever. She doesn't really have anything that she carries around all the time. You know, she sends letters to Mike, so maybe you could flavor something there. You hold a letter and it gives you advantage on con saves once a day, or lets you cast a spell of sending to Mike or whatever. But I didn't want to stretch it, and I'll let you come up with any homebrew items from Stranger Things that you want to go with. Maybe a token, a statue thing to summon a Demigorgon or something like that if you're role-playing as Vecna. It's really hard to say. So no homebrew items, unfortunately. This is a pretty plain one, so anyone can build this for the most part. So like I said, yeah, it's 11. She's a sorcerer, level 17. Plus 8 to con saves, plus 11 to charisma saves, which is fantastic. Our passive stats aren't fantastic, but the skills themselves are all pretty good. Plus 7 to Arcana, identifying all those strange magical creatures from the upside down. Insight, definitely. She calls out a lot more lies from Papa during the later seasons, so I think she's more switched on with that now. She doesn't appreciate being lied to, and that's very apparent with the whole friends don't lie thing. We have the charisma intimidation plus 11. I think when she wants to be, she can absolutely be. Blood coming out her nose, blood coming out her eyes, ripping things apart with her hands. And again, for Vecna, this works perfectly as well, because he's one of the most intimidating characters I've ever seen in a show. I was actually quite scared of it. I was like, Jesus, this is getting pretty like deep compared to the first season, pretty gory and stuff like that. So yeah, season 4 Stranger Things is definitely more mature than the previous ones. We have plus 7 to investigation, which I've kind of already explained, and then survival plus 5 at the bottom, just to round out the skill tree. Let's move straight into the spells. So you can see obviously our stats now. We're sitting at 14 dex, 15 con, 12 intelligence, 8 wisdom, 20 charisma. So the con is 1 away from a little bump, but we still have 104 hit points, 12 AC. She is just wearing clothes. So yeah, I mean, you're squishy, but she is just a girl in the show. Right, let's go through the spells. Cantrips, we have Blade Ward, Gust, Mage Hand, Sword Prepared, Message, Mind Sliver, Minor Illusion, Prestidigitation, and Sword Burst. Now, the ones I guess I'll explain. Gust, she has telekinetic powers, leans into that a little bit more, closing doors, closing windows, whatever it might be. Mage Hand, we've already been through, don't need to go through that. Message, she has minor telepathic abilities. I don't see why she wouldn't have message prepared. I don't know why you'd ever use it, though, in this case. There was just no other better options, really, because she already has telepathic within 60 feet. I don't know why you'd use this, but there you go. We have options, right? We have Mind Sliver, minor kind of thought effects. I think psychic damage that could absolutely work as she influences people with her powers. Minor illusion, absolutely capable of. Prestidigitation, absolutely capable of, but maybe limit it to minor illusion, prestidigitation to like audible things as opposed to visual things, perhaps. And then we have Sword Burst. There's a few moments in the show, I think, where she kind of lets loose and screams, and like a shockwave goes around and everything gets blasted back. Sword Burst could fit in there somewhere. You just label it as nothing magically. You can't see anything. It's just a shockwave. We have a Vecna kind of focus spell, Arms of Hadar, which is, I mean, you invoke the power of Hadar, the Dark Hunger, tendrils of dark energy erupt. So you could say this is invisible if you're role-playing 11, and this is very visible if you're role-playing Vecna. We have Catapult, which is basically just another telekinetic ability, chuck an object across the room. Dissonant Whispers is a better version of Mind Sliver. I believe it doesn't incapacitate things. It must immediately use its reaction to move as far away as possible if it fails the save, which is fantastic if you're trying to push something away. They just become frightened of you, essentially. You influence their mind with visions of the far realm in D&D, or the Upside Down, or in Vecna's case, the clock thing. You make people run from him in fear. 4 chimes. We have Featherfall, which happens literally in season 1 as she stops someone from falling off a cliff, or is it herself? I can't quite remember, actually. Either way, Featherfall works. We have Shield, which kind of works as a mage armor kind of thing. She can absolutely block attacks from otherworldly threats, I would say. Why not, with her powers? At second level, we have Calm Emotions, which doesn't really have a story behind it, to be honest. I just feel like anything with psionic abilities that can invade people's minds could potentially be able to do this, or she just threatens them into being calm. We have Detect Thoughts twice from telepathic charisma feat and our psionic spells, so that's great to have. We have Whole Person, which absolutely possible. Rather than just pushing them away, maybe you can keep things on the spot. Fantastic spell. Then we have Shatter, which I definitely think works. Now, it is thunder damage rather than like pushing something away sonically, but there's a lot of screaming moments in Stranger Things where she just uses her powers and screams at something, basically. So I think Shatter could be useful for that, for just crushing something. And for Vecna, his executions during season 4, if you know what I'm talking about, I think Shatter could be used for that as well, just annihilating someone's body, essentially. Making their ears bleed, etc., etc. We have Fly. We haven't seen them fly. I don't think there's any reason they couldn't because of their psionic capabilities. Why couldn't they? We have Hunger of Hadar, very Vecna focused, as tendrils come out from the Upside Down. He does use those things a lot, especially in season 4. His tendrils and tentacles, whatever they might be called. We have Sending, so far communication, basically on the same plane of existence. 11 can jump into things' minds. So why not have Sending where she can just send a little message? We have Evard's Black Tentacles, another Vecna-focused one, definitely influences from the Upside Down. Ralathim's Psychic Lance. Now, this is a much more powerful psychic spell, and it actually incapacitates a creature for a round if they fail to save, and it deals a good chunk of psychic damage as well. We have Summon Aberration, because why not? Again, very Vecna focused, this one. An Aberrant Spirit, we have a standard stat block for everything now, so you could say he summons a minor version of the Mind Flayer or the Demogorgon or whatever it might be, and you could use Summon Aberration for that there. We have Bigby's Hand. You could just flavor it as invisible for a moment. That might cause some problems with the DM, but always ask with these kind of things. I think Bigby's Hand, if you wanted to deal some bludgeoning damage to summon, force damage, you could use the Clench Fist. She manipulates a lot of small things and larger things with her powers, so does Vecna. So I don't see there's any reason why you couldn't get away with using a Bigby's Hand with a few modifications. We have Hold Monster, also at 5th level, just a more powerful version of Hold Person. Why wouldn't we want that? Rarest Telepathic Bond, so 8 willing creatures are now connected telepathically. This doesn't really happen in the show, but if we're leaning into that telepathic telekinesis side, why not? Telekinesis, just straight the spell, is the most powerful version of this kind of thing that we would have. Telekinesis is fantastic. I don't need to explain it too much there. We can manipulate up to like £3,000 worth of objects, something like that. And then we move into 6th level spells, which only have 1 slot for. Mental Prison. You can attempt to bind a creature with an illusory spell that only it perceives. So you just manipulate someone's mind, and this is absolutely Vecna all over when he brings his victims to the Upside Down and just begins to judge them and make them doubt themselves and remember things from their past. Mental prison is the way to do that. There's no reason why, if Eleven wanted to, she couldn't do that either. We have etherealness, and this is more of that dream walk, mind walk thing that 11 does, I think, as she kind of passes through worlds if she needs to, like when she launches number 1 through into the Upside Down. It's kind of an etherealness vibe, passing between planes. It's a bit of a stretch, but a fun one, and definitely kind of fits the character profile, I think. We have power word pain. Absolutely no reason why couldn't do this either. If a target has fewer than 100 hit points, it is subject to crippling pain. Its speed is then no higher than 10 feet, has disadvantage on attack rolls, ability checks, saving throws, other than Constitution saving throws. Finally, if the target tries to cast a spell, it must first succeed in a con save, or the casting fails and the spell is wasted. So this is kind of a Cruciatus curse from Harry Potter, I guess you could say. But again, there's no reason why she couldn't do this. Rather than just killing things or pushing things outright, just crush their mind, crush their soul, whatever it might be. And again, this is more Vecna focused, more of a torture-esque kind of attitude towards it. At 8th level, we only have one spell selected, which is Power Word Stun. Very similar to Power Word Pain. You just rack something with pain and stop it basically dead on the spot there. One creature, less than 150 hit points, stunned. Ridiculous spell. So good. And finally, to round it out, which is why we kind of went for level 17 as well, we do have access to 9th level spells, which I've chosen 2. Gate. Spoilers for Season 4. 11 is the reason all the shit is happening, basically. She opened the portal into the Upside Down by pushing number 1 / Vecna through to it. She closed it in Season 1, which was revealed in Season 4. There's no reason why she couldn't make this happen again. Conjure a portal linking to an unoccupied space you can see within range on a different plane of existence. Done. Finally, Psychic Scream. I would detail this as her most powerful ability, where she goes into those 4 moments where she just basically takes no shit from anyone, excuse the language. You unleash the power of your mind to blast the intellect of up to 10 creatures, dealing 14d6 psychic damage, and if they fail to save, they are stunned. Which is ridiculous. I mean, it is a 9th level spell, but 10 creatures potentially stunned all in one round? Absolutely crazy. The only thing is that intelligence saving throws are probably the weakest of most creatures in the game. So, an incredible spell, incredible ability, and I think absolutely represents 11 through and through in this particular space. Oh, and obviously I should mention Gate Vecna. That's kind of his whole play in Season 4, open gates. So there you go. Inventory is literally empty. We just have clothes. So that is it. That is 11 / Vecna, if you wanted it to be, from Stranger Things. Thank you so much for watching. This has been The Legend Forge. It's nice to be back. Hopefully I'll be more regular. See you all soon. Thanks for all the support recently. I know my subscriber count has been creeping up ever so slowly. We're almost hitting 900. So thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. Like I said, this has been Nathan and Deer's Guide to Everything. This has been The Legend Forge, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.
Your friends have lost. Your suffering is almost at an end.